Lawsuit alleges New York City Mayor Eric Adams of fixing NBA basketball games in New York City. A recently amended complaint, which was filed on March 25, 2022, alleges that current New York City Mayor Eric Adams and former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio were involved in a racketeering scheme which violated multiple federal laws as they imposed and utilized the New York City vaccine mandate for private sector employees. The plaintiff, Richard Thomas, who originally filed the complaint in December of 2021, index number 101428/2021, claims that the current and former mayors of New York City were involved in rigging the home games of New York City teams, and specifically the Brooklyn Nets home games, which deprived Kyrie Irving of playing with the Brooklyn Nets during home games at the Barclays Center and at away games in New York City at Madison Square Garden against the New York Knicks. Thomas accuses both mayors, of violating the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, 18 U.S. Code Section 1961 to 1968, and the Communications Act of 1934, 47 U.S. Code Section 509, and the Communications Act Amendments of 1960. In the racketeering charge, the plaintiff stated the following: the defendant's mandate actually violates the RICO Act. It actually creates fraudulent gambling wagers inside of New York City, New York State, America, and globally. New York City is involved in rigging and fixing NBA, National Basketball Association, basketball games. The plaintiff, Richard Thomas, and other New York City residents do not have an opportunity to make a real wager on an NBA basketball game inside of New York City because the defendants are rigging and fixing basketball games. The defendants are denying an unvaccinated Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets an opportunity to play basketball in NBA home games, but is allowing unvaccinated outsiders to play basketball inside of New York City in NBA games. New York City is rigging the win-loss records of teams. They are rigging the NBA rankings, which involves the positions of the team's opportunity to win the NBA Finals. And New York City is getting ready to rig MLB, Major League Baseball games. When Frank Costello and Lucky Luciano rig sporting events, they call them the head of the Italian mafia. When Arnold Rothstein and Meyer Lansky rig sporting events, they call them the head of the Jewish mafia. But when Bill de Blasio and Eric Adams rig sporting events inside of New York City, they call them the mayor of New York City. In the Communications Act violations, the plaintiff claimed the following. 1. The defendants are in violation of the Communications Act of 1934, 47 U.S. Code Section 509, and the Communications Act Amendments of 1960. Number 2. Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets is not allowed to use his intellectual knowledge and skill of basketball in a bona fide contest on radio and television. The defendants are involved in rigging the outcome of the game because Kyrie Irving's lack of participation and allowing unvaccinated outside players to play and have an advantage in the contest. Therefore, the prize of a win and a higher ranking is being manipulated for the higher prize of the NBA championship. Number 3, therefore, the plaintiff cannot listen to or view and enjoy an actual competitive basketball game by the Brooklyn Nets during a home game. Number 4, 47 U.S. Code Section 509 states the following. 47 U.S. Code Section 509 prohibited practices in contests of knowledge, skill, or chance. A. Influencing, prearranging, or predetermining outcome. It shall be unlawful for any person with intent to deceive. Number 1. To supply to any contestant in a purportedly bona fide contest of intellectual knowledge or intellectual skill, any special and secret assistance, whereby the outcome of such contest will be in whole or in part prearranged or predetermined. Number 2, by means of persuasion, bribery, intimidation, or otherwise to induce or cause any contestant in a purportedly bona fide contests of intellectual knowledge or intellectual skill to refrain in any manner from using or displaying his knowledge or skill in such contests, whereby the outcome thereof will be in whole or in part prearranged or predetermined. 3, to engage in any artifice or scheme for the purpose of prearranging or predetermining in whole or in part the outcome of a purportedly bona fide contest of intellectual knowledge, intellectual skill, or chance. Number 4, to produce or participate in the production for broadcasting of, to broadcast or participate in the broadcasting of, to offer to a licensee for broadcasting or to sponsor any radio program, knowing or having reasonable ground for believing that in connection with a purportedly bona fide contest of intellectual knowledge, intellectual skill, or chance constitute in any part of such program any person has done or is going to do any act or thing referred in paragraph 1, 2, or 3 above. Number 5, to conspire with any other person or persons to do any act or thing prohibited by paragraph 1, 2, 3, or 4 above, if one or more of such persons do any act to affect the object of such conspiracy. For purposes of Section 508, the term contest means any contest broadcast by a broadcast station in connection with which any money or any other thing of value is offered as a prize or prizes to be paid or presented by the program sponsor or by any other person or persons as announced in the course of the broadcast. For purposes of Section 508, the term listening or viewing public means those members of the public who, with the aid of radio receiving sets, listen to or view programs broadcast by radio or television stations. Whoever violates Section 508A of the Act shall be fined no more than $10,000 or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. These penalties are in addition to any civil penalties or other enforcement action that may be assessed by the FCC. Oral arguments of the Article 78 proceeding were originally set for March 22, 2022, but it was adjourned to April 26, 2022, as the plaintiff Richard Thomas seeks to stop the NYC vaccine mandate for the private sector.